G'day, thanks for watching, and in life you will never want for 1mm more than what you will using this lens here. Let's talk about it. Okay, thanks for hanging around. We're talking about the Canon EF 17-40 f4L. Now this is an ultra wide angle L series lens. It's a professional grade lens. You know it, it's second cousin to the higher priced, more sought after EF 16-35 f2.8L. So if that's the case and there's a lens better than this, that goes 1mm wider, that has a faster aperture, then why is this a pro variant lens? And why would you buy it? Well, I can answer the second question really easy, because it's way less expensive. This thing is about a third of the price of the 16-35 f2.8. It's a lot cheaper second hand. It's still an L series, weather sealed, professional grade lens. It's got the red ring around it. It's everything you're looking for to show that you are in the upper echelon of photographers everywhere, but it's not the widest and it's not the fastest. The thing with this lens, being that it's 17-40, it's actually got a greater range than the 16-35. But the thing is, you don't buy the 17-40, or the 16-35 for that matter, for the tight end of the lenses. You're buying them for the wide end of the lens. And although the 17-40 is pretty wide, there's something that keeps nagging away at me, like, I wonder what that extra 1mm would show. Do I take one step back? What about the wall? Or do I take 2 steps back? I mean, how far back do I have to go to get that extra 1mm of width on the lens in the wide angle of the range? How far back? The only other times I can really think of that you'd be looking for that extra 1mm is when a baseball bat swings past your head or a bullet whizzing past your ear. But with this lens here, you're always looking for the extra millimeter, or at least I am. I'm wondering to myself, what would that extra millimeter give me? How much wider is that extra millimeter? We know that at the wide end of the range, that extra millimeter makes a much larger difference than it does at the tight end of the range. For instance, if you have the 70-200, a 70-200 on 1 is not really going to be a massive difference, but it's that extra millimeter at the ultra wide angle that really sings out to me. I really like this 17-40. It is a good wide angle lens, and I'm going to show you some photos now. But the thing is, it just doesn't seem quite wide enough. It doesn't have that wide angle flare that you're looking for, that pushes right out to the edges of the frame. It just doesn't quite cover a lot of the distance. And I'm not exactly sure if the 16-35 would, because I don't have the 16-35. Maybe you do, maybe you know. I'm going to show you some photos here using the Canon EFS 10-18mm on a crop sensor camera. Now the 10-18mm is obviously way out of the leagues of both the 17-40 and also the 16-35 lens, but it does have the 10mm, which with the 1.6 times crop is 16mm. So let's have a look at some of these photos and see if they're actually wider than what I can get with the 17-40. The problem with this lens, of course, the EFS 10-18mm, is that it's f4.5 at its fastest aperture, so it pales in comparison to the likes of the 16-35 2.8. One thing I do struggle with the 17-40 is its lack of image stabilization. Now, it's not generally a massive issue at wide angles because you have less effects of camera shake using a wide angle lens and you actually require less stabilization. But it's still an issue for, say, video work, for instance, where you have to rely on digital IS if you're using the cameras I'm using. Maybe if you're on the Sonys or something else that has inbuilt image stabilization or the more latest Canon models, it's not an issue for you. But it's always good to have image stabilization in the lens, and this one doesn't have it. I do like how the lens looks on a camera though. It's got a nice feel, it's nice and weighty, it's got good build, it's got the weather sealing, it's got the red ring as we already explained, it's got the focus distance window. It really is a good lens, but owning this lens is a bit of a vexed issue because all the time it's in your hand, you're wondering what it would be like with the 16-35 on there. But anyway, the point of this video is to say that if you are looking for an inexpensive lens for your Canon EF or RF mounts, then the EF 17-40 f4 is actually a really good option because it does give you that ultra wide angle. It does open up the possibilities from that point of view for you where not many other lenses would. The only other option you've really got is to go to the more expensive 16-35. Of course, you could save a little bit of cash going to the 16-35 f4, but if you're going to dive in there, you may as well jump off a higher board and get the 16-35 f2.8. For me, in the meantime, I don't actually need it because I can get the ultra wide angle using the 17-40, and that is the key. The other advantage of the 16-35mm, other than the extra 1mm on the wide range, is the faster aperture f2.8. Now that is really great for getting the shallow depth of field and also in low light situations. But if you're a landscape photographer or you do real estate or architectural photography, and so long as you use a tripod or some other stable shooting platform, then you can simply slow down your shutter speed and still grab that extra light that the f2.8 would. And in reality, very few people are shooting landscapes at f2.8. Very often you're going to stop down to something that brings more detail in, such as f5.6 or even up to f8. That's probably where you're going to be looking at for landscape. And certainly for real estate photography, where you want to grab the view and bring it right into the windows, you're going to need to stop down to at least that f8 sort of range. Yeah, well that's it. Pretty much the points of this video are that the Canon EF 17-40 f4L is a terrific lens. It's a great ultra-wide angle. Obviously not quite as great as the 16-35, but you can still achieve great things with it. It's got the excellent pro build quality, the weather sealing, the red ring, the focus distance window, all of those things. And look, if you don't quite have the cash to be able to spring for the 16-35, which will put you under before you can blink, then this is certainly a viable option. The only thing that's going to be left is just a slight nagging feeling. There's something else out there for you. There's something else out there for you. There's something better. It involves 1 extra millimeter at the wide end, but is that going to be enough for you to tip you over the edge to spend the extra couple of grand to get an extra 1 millimeter? Okay, well that's it. The lens does come recommended. I'm looking for the day where I can get the 16-35 f2.8L. Maybe you are too. Let's shoot for the stars. All right, thanks again for watching. Catch you on the next one. Bye.